Hello, welcome. My name is Austin Seagrave, and this is the fourth of my talks on the third evil, which is liberalism, the evil that followed on from communism and Nazism. This talk is concerned with revolution. Revolution is a component of all three evils, although the liberalist revolution learnt a lot from the past and didn't come in with violence, sneaked in with promises. Revolution is fashionable, highly fashionable in fact, and has been since the French Revolution. Amongst whom? Not amongst the elders, not amongst the wise, not amongst love. Amongst the adolescents, the life refusers, the skulking nerds, the semi-educated, those of whom it is most true that a little learning is a dangerous thing. Then, amongst those with the terror of others' free will, whom I call controlists. They used to be called control freaks, but sadly there are too many of them to be freaks. Then, amongst the cruel, the sadists. And eventually, amongst the pimps, the scavengers, the pickpockets. I will consider 21 components of revolution. There will be some overlapping, looking at the same thing from a different point of view. The first component, of course, is bloody violence, murder, frenzy. And if you think liberalism does not manifest that, just you wait. The second component is a catastrophic break with the past. Continuity snapped, acquired virtues, methods, skills, best practice, especially constitutional, especially how to keep the peace, lost. These constitute tradition, which is not static, evolves, which is not necessarily in books, and is the best part of man, all lost. The third component, hatred. Hatred drives the break with the past way, but hatred is not letting the past go. Hatred is clinging. Hatred is the last clinging to the past. Hatred will not let the past go. Hatred is expressed by revisionism. The past is written out of the past. For example, public schools. Revisionism demands that all pupils were abused, whereas to this day old boys are still leaving large sums of money to their alma mater in their wills. Christianity is written out. BC and AD become BCE and CE. The English are written out of England. The English Civil War is renamed the War of the Three Kingdoms, though it is difficult to know how a war is fought when all three kingdoms had the same king. The denial of the English is genocide by other means. The fourth component, revolution is not new life. Revolution is negation of the past. Killing dad is not the same as making a baby. Liberalist morality is negation, is anti-morality. The Victorians said, boy, if you masturbate, you will go mad. The liberalists say, boy, if you don't masturbate, you will go mad. Simply negation, turned upside down. No, it is not freedom of choice. Revolution does not allow freedom of choice. Revolutionary intolerance. Hatred not only of the past, hatred of present opposition. Paranoid suspiciousness. Incremental punishment. Overflowing prisons. Special camps. The sixth component, revolution is inversion for continuity, twice. First, as I have said, hatred is clinging to the past by the opposite means. Second, the past will not let go. The past clings to itself, so evolution can only progress by revolution. To repeat, the new is not in revolution. Revolution is sterile. Revolution allows the new as earthquake allows new build. In other words, revolution is the explosive result of two mutually clinging, the refusal of the old to let go and become the past, the refusal of the young to grow up and inherit. Two little stories to illustrate this. One day, under the immense sky, the eaglets threw the eagle off the eyrie. The eagle had grown old. He had been untrue to his eagle nature. He had so enjoyed his dominance that he had got addicted to his dominance, and so he had not thrown his eaglets off the eyrie, so that the eaglets had never gained the joy of their wings, had never become eagles. And now, in their rage at his geriatric impotence, his failure to hunt for their food, they throw him off. Second little story. The emperor is old now, can hardly lift his pillow buttocks off the filthy golden throne. The eunuchs are sweating and trembling, listening to the noise of a collapsing empire getting closer and closer. Now they could find their freedom. Now they could run away. Instead, they begin to mutter. They begin to edge towards the throne. They dare to lift their eyes. The imperial heap of blubber flinches. They leap on him and slap him to death with their fat, jeweled fingers. The seventh component. Revolution is not grown up. Revolution is frozen transience. Revolution is adolescence. The revolutionary is caught between dependence and independence. The revolutionary rejects his father, refuses to become father. You cannot become father until you forgive your father for being merely human. And herein is a cause of revolutionary violence, monstrously greater than the violence of the Ancien Regime. The personality of the revolutionary is in the nowhere between the trust of the child and the self-confidence of the grown-up. Anxiety, insecurity, and the absence of self-love, self-belief, and self-contentment fills the nowhere of the revolutionary soul. And worst, he has no faith. So, of course, he cannot love. No love without faith, no forgiveness without love. Love forgives. Hatred demands perfection. Of course he cannot manage tolerance. Of course he cannot manage the concept of loyal opposition. And of course he has no sense of humor. Of course he cannot be laughed at. If you cannot be laughed at, you cannot be lived with. When revolution comes in, humanity goes out. Hatred and yearning are his drivers. Naturally, he is never to be free, never to be grown up, never to be at rest. Don't get in his way. The ninth component. So it follows that the adolescent revolutionary dares not assert paternal authority, is no human alpha male. What he does is find confidence in a gang. There's safety in numbers. The age of revolution is the age of the revolutionary adolescent gang. The 10th component. Revolutionary ideology. The rise of the nerd. The gang of revolutionary adolescence is the gang of nerds. Hatred and negation need an excuse. Hatred and negation are evil spirits seeking a mind to occupy. A little learning is a dangerous thing. The revolutionary adolescent nerd gangs are the followers of false prophets. In his back bedroom, or in the London School of Economics, the revolutionary adolescent nerd has read a book and thought a thought, and so he is possessed by a devil or ideology, as it is sometimes called. The 11th component, an ideology is an intellectual addiction. It is absolute and solitary. Natural selection in ideas is a Socratic dialogue. The intellectual bigot utters an undoubted truth. Socrates finds a contradiction to this undoubted truth. Socrates is given hemlock to drink. Truth is simple. This is a simple truth. No man has more than half the truth. The 12th component is the yearning of the revolutionary adolescent nerd. So he has thought a thought. What then? That thought, never tested by natural selection, is to be imposed on us all. We must believe. We must all believe. Our unbelief is his doubt. His doubt is his hell. Our belief is his heaven. Every revolutionary adolescent nerd gang is the true church. A godless church, but a church nonetheless. We are the laity, they are the priests. We are to be fetus in their benign womb. The 14th component is the church militant. The gang of priests is at the same time a political party. The gang of priests hates lords, kings and emperors, not because they were cruel or unjust, but because the gang believes that lords, kings and emperors are usurpers. The gang knows that they are the true governors of mankind. They know that they are the true elite. And the 15th component. But the revolutionary adolescent nerd elite is the gang of wannabes, if only they dared. And they only dare in a gang, enough mice to kill the cat. Their individual timidity is the inevitable consequence of their individual lack of self-belief, which is the inevitable consequence of their individual lack of self-love, which is the inevitable consequence of improper parenting. Individually, they suffer from what used to be called an inferiority complex. The typical revolutionary adolescent nerd is seeking a place of safety, not merely physical safety, far more safety from anxiety, absolute soul safety. Not, however, in the mouse gang. The mouse gang is the means to an end. He seeks his absolute safety in the people. But why should the people give himself safety? There is nothing attractive about him personally, typically a weedy runt. He must open them up with a gift. The gift is his ideology, his absolute truth. His truth has to be absolute, or he will be plagued with doubts about it. Doubts arouse anxiety. His absolute truth is the true way to absolute happiness, not in the hereafter, but now. New world order, heaven on earth. What this feels like to him is that he loves the people and longs to save them. And of course, therefore, they love him. And those who don't love him are enemies of the people and must be destroyed. By terrorism, before the gang is in power. By gas and gulag, if the gang gets into power. His monstrous murderousness is the inevitable consequence of his lack of self-confidence, his inferiority complex, having no inner peace that comes from self-love, that comes from being raised in a natural, a healthy home. He suffers from a fearful absence. In him there is no tolerance. His insecurity is like a wound. Opposition is like salt, rubbed in the wound. His yearning is to find safety in the vast womb of public love. And I say again, therefore he does not love, he is incapable of love. That love alone is love, that does not demand to be loved. Love is glad, love does not cling. Clinging is the death of life. Letting go is the most agony. I say again, love forgives, hatred demands perfection. So, of course, the revolutionary suffers from incremental paranoia. Of course he cannot grow up, he cannot rest. And, of course, he cannot mind his own business, and, of course, he cannot be laughed at. If you cannot be laughed at, you cannot be lived with. Robespierre is the prototypical revolutionary. Not Napoleon, in other words. This is the 16th component. Nerds are not Napoleons. Napoleons dare to impose their will on others in their own name and on their own. They use gangs, they don't join them. Napoleon expresses the first revolutionary opportunism, which is the biologically necessary return of the human alpha male. Napoleon is the return of the human alpha male who commands and calms and restores the peace, and then goes on to express his own Napoleonic ego in the conquest of threats, rivals and neighbors. Stalin is another such. That Stalin is vastly more murderous than Napoleon is because hatred had 100 years to grow, and the virtue of the Ancien Regime had 100 years to decay. In other words, Stalin was not a gentleman. No mention of Hitler here, because Hitler does not have that sort of personality. He has a quite different personality, and it's not the place to deal with his personality here. Napoleon was the last of the old king type, a sort of throwback, really. The 100 years between Napoleon and Stalin were 100 years of vacuum, the old gone, the new awaiting selection. The vacuum was concealed below a glossy scum called, among other things, progress and development. Now the vacuum is revealed. What went was the old king-type alpha male. What is awaited is the new alpha male. Meanwhile, what mankind got was Stalin, Mao Zedong, and Pol Pot. In the beginning is Mother. Mother is the guardian of life. Mother thinks. From her thought comes Father. Father must prove his worthiness to be selected. This builds in Father great strength and will. Mother thinks this strength and will is the guardian of the kin. So there he sits, aloof and watchful, lonely Father, strong to save. Then, one day, the darkness falls. Father sees in a pool of sunlit water a face, and realizes that it is his face. He looks up, and far beyond the sunlit pool, he sees the end. He rebels. He seizes Mother with his mother-selected strength, and thinks that if he possesses her deep life, the end will stay beyond the sunlit pool. He rapes her. Mother becomes his favorite hidey-hole. At last he is no longer strong to save, and his favorite hidey-hole scratches him like a cat. What we are waiting for is the new mother to select the new father. But it isn't necessarily going to happen. Species go extinct. We ought to know. If all this is too big for you, blame your liberalist ignorance makers. 17th component is the second revolutionary opportunism, the profiteer's takeover. The revolutionary gang is the door to a potential gold mine, a monopoly, in fact. 18 is the third revolutionary opportunism, the controlist's takeover. The classic revolutionary is the lesser civil servant, the school teacher, the library assistant, the clerk in the public office, the police official. It is their dependence on the state or dynasty which arouses their anxiety that the state or dynasty is failing, which drives them into the revolutionary mouse gangs. Theirs is the compulsion to inversion for continuity. The revolutionary state is the state continued by the opposite means. And not just continued, the 19th component, the revolutionary state is the absolute state. The absolute state is necessary to protect the revolution. Compare the Ancien Régime state with the present incremental liberalist state. 20th component. Revolution is biological perversion, denial of the two laws of natural selection, the conservation of the selected and marginal change. The breaking of these laws brings a horror worse than earthquake, the horror that is called chaos, which is followed by extinction. The 21st component of revolution. Finally, it is time for liberation from revolution. Let the spring come. I am going to conclude with a few words on the first revolution. The first revolution is what you call the Protestant Reformation. No Reformation, the Protestant Revolution. The Protestant Revolution is the proto-revolution. It has all the symptoms. The hatred of the papal past, the obsessive hatred, the persecution and abuse continued down centuries, even into my own experience. The break of the Church's continuum from Christ and his apostles. Historical revisionism, i.e. the invention of a false past to pretend continuity. The rejection of evolution, which Christians call the Holy Ghost, who continues to speak Christ's message to man, since Christ did not speak all his message in his time on earth. Where the Holy Ghost is, the Protestant revolutionaries have put a dead end. Their revolution is as bloody as the communists, making instantly those who remain true to the ways of their fathers suddenly alien and enemy, foreigners in their own land. A frenzy of destruction, a frenzy of pillage and looting, not exactly how Christ and his apostles founded the church, and adolescence, a monstrous adolescence. Reject Daddy Pope with murderous loathing. Refuse fatherhood. Seek instead an absolute parent. Seek to become God's elect, predestined from before creation for eternal bliss. For us few, not for you, for us. And yet, this confidence of electedness brings to the elect no peace of soul, no calmness, no rest, no forgiveness. Instead, a monstrous strutting pride and a psychotic restlessness, an insatiable greed to prove electedness. The Calvinist, especially the British Calvinist, is the locust of earth.